Welcome to More Than Mindset, the only podcast that bridges the gap between spirituality and success. Go beyond the mind with clarity and confidence coach Kim Guillory and learn how to integrate your passion to serve with your skills and experience to create a business you love. Let's get started.
Have you ever felt the need to make a change in your life or business, but you felt obligated to what you were already doing? Has it ever happened to you? Like you continue day after day doing things that aren't working, but you don't know how to pivot, how to get out of whatever the previous agreement was? Well, buckle up. I'm going to take you through the permission to pivot episode. That is what we're going to talk about today. So, being in business for over 30 years, so I opened in 1994, March of 94, my first hair and nail salon. I did manicures, pedicures, that kind of cool stuff. And I have made a lot of changes over the years, and it never gets easy. Even today, I find myself doing things out of habit, doing things that did work, even when they aren't working anymore. But my commitment and obligation to my word or to what my vision was, it's like padlocked. And it's very hard for me to let myself off the hook. So I'm curious if you have that same experience whenever you start a coaching program or maybe an intensive, or you start working with a client for a certain amount of time and it doesn't turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out. Do you just drive all the way through no matter what? Or do you pause and assess and maybe pivot and change things up? I consider myself to be very flexible, yet very committed and disciplined. Actually, it's really tricky. We were talking about this in the VIP group call this morning. When to let yourself off the hook or when to drive and pound all the way through the discipline and the commitment. So, and it was pretty interesting to watch how we interpret this stuff. So there's the side of us, or there's those who say, put out the intention and just wait for the universe to deliver it in your mailbox. And then there's another side that is like, it requires hard work and discipline and drive, and you can't have anything unless you worked very, very hard for it. But those are two ends of this spectrum. What if they were a middle part? What if you had permission to assess and pivot? I call this tattering, and it's going and trying something and then assess the results and then tweak it and then try again. And my friends, that is what business is like. That is what entrepreneurship is all about. There is no perfect how. There is an intention, there is a vision, there's a math and path, like, oh, this is possible. If I add 10 and 2, then I will get, right? So it's like you can figure out the math to what you want. But whenever you find yourself really stuck in the weeds and trying to figure out exactly how, chances are it's time to assess and pivot. And listen, this is very common. This is something that our mind does all the time. So there are so many aspects of us. And I'm going to tell you a little story about how I came to talking about this today in my own personal business and life. So I'm very driven, as most of you may know. I've been doing this podcast for a very long time. I've been in business for a long time. I have switched the nature of my business, but it always stays in self-help and empowerment. I want to educate and empower and teach and show people that whatever they want is possible. If it's possible for someone else, it's possible for you. But you have to be willing to question if it's what you want or not. I think that's the tricky part. Just because you see someone else does it, or are you willing to do what they did to get it? And if you can't answer that question, if you can't look back at their success path and say that you would also work that hard or stay that long, you might want to question to see if it is just your mind like attaching to ideas or if it is really truly your idea. Because I believe if we've been given a desire, if we have a mission, if we have a purpose to fulfill, I believe that's given to us by God. I I think there is a greater force at play outside of us that we are kind of following along through faith. That sometimes I believe that. Other times I'm just mad about all of it because I'm like, this is not mine. I don't want it and I can't kill it. It's unfair, right? You know what I'm talking about? If you are a purpose-driven entrepreneur and you are in the people departments, you know how like it's all about helping people. It gets frustrating because you can't control people and they have so much disbelief and they've had so many like negative experiences. And so they often put that on you and it's coming from fear. But regardless, if you have the passion and desire to serve and help people, it's really hard to put that out. So with that said, I found myself like kind of in this more driver mode. And I started listening to feedback from my clients who were feeling pressured, like feeling like they were disappointing me because they weren't moving fast enough. That was the first indication, like, okay, something's going on here because that's not my intention. That's not at all what I was meaning to do, or that's not what I meant by what I said. So that told me to check in, to back off, settle in, and see where that urgency or where that pressure was coming from, and if it was within myself, and if I was bringing that into the container. So I did that. And come to find out, I had gone off track. So I've got 50-50 business and personal development, coach training, like that 50-50. Like I love helping leaders, coaches, entrepreneurs get into position to better serve. That's number one, that leads the front. So in order to do that, I have to help them monetize. I have to help them make money so that they have accessibility to the things that they need in order to get their word to the world. But I noticed that I was all business and very little coaching, like 1 hour a week, I was doing the coach training. And I didn't notice until I noticed that something was falling off. And so I backed up. I took about 30% of my clientele down. I finished out some contracts. I released some. And I went all in on the integrative mind body coach training. I'm doing a free coach week this week where I'm just doing coaching five days, just really just making myself available. And it feels so good because I pivoted and because I'm receiving the benefits of that and I have more clarity and more understanding about what got me there. I wanted to just come on and talk about it. So if you've seen some changes in my social media, if you've seen some changes in the emails and the way that what I'm speaking about, this is what's going on. I'm pretty transparent. I am very flexible. I do pivot and change a lot, but I also like to inform. I am responding to something that didn't feel good anymore. And, I have this commitment. If it's not fun, I'm not doing it. So, and by the way, I think working hard is fun. So it's not that I don't want to work hard. It's that I felt like I was jumping hurdles or like hitting up against a brick wall and things weren't like opening up for me. Do you know how it feels whenever you're stuck in traffic and you just can't get anywhere? It's just like every time you just like you pause, there's like traffic and traffic. And then have you ever felt where there's traffic, but you just kind of like ease through like butter? Like it's just super simple. Well, that's the difference between force and flow. And I personally like to work in flow. But whenever I am pressuring or aggressive, as some will say, aggressive and maybe drive, like I'm driven or I'm very goal oriented and focused and like disciplined, and I'm starting to portray that, chances are I'm feeling a little out of control. And there's something in the environment or someone in the environment who's not moving. Guys, I know you know what I'm talking about. You're trying to get to the finish line, but it feels like a racehorse on a walking tracks. It's like you just can't get there. And I know to stop and pause and question that. And I did. And that's the permission to pivot. Are you willing to investigate? Are you willing to question? Are you willing to change things? Can you give yourself or let yourself off the hook? Give yourself permission. Take the pause, settle in, ask the questions, listen from the inside for the answers. Don't go to anyone else. For me, it's about unplugging from everything from what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, my natural everyday surroundings. Like I just have to unplug and go do something completely different, maybe even surprising. And that forces me to get back in my body and to get back on my path. I like to say it's like staying between the railroad tracks. Sometimes we have a destination and the train stops at a few exits before your destination. And sometimes you get out and wander around and you kind of get lost. And so that's what happened. So now I'm back in the train. I'm back on track. I am feeling lighter. Things are feeling easier. I'm feeling more flow. People are coming in naturally. And I'm doing what I love to do. I'm really excited about the coach training, about the 10-week intensive, about doing more personal coaching, professional coaching, teaching coaches how to become competent coaches. Call it super coaching. I know that is my zone of genius, to help people get in touch with that part of themselves that they want to evolve and grow and contribute, and how to monetize that in the material world. I've actually been playing a little bit more in human design again, which is super fun because I had like completely put that aside. I don't know, I just got aggravated because it had become like the new thing everyone was talking about, but it was all mental, just a bunch of mental stuff, which was not fun at all for me. So I just completely detached and just saying, I gave myself permission to pivot, to get back into more play and more flow, release some of that serious pressure of survival that I was feeling for my clients, and also serving in a very aggressive community and just driven, just a lot of drive. And I know that about myself. If I'm in one environment too much, I tend to take it on. So, do you know that about yourself? How do you pivot, or how do you give yourself permission, or do you force yourself to stay with something that's not working? Are you willing to question and change it? Or do you feel like you're stuck in cement and you can't make the change? Do you have shame about changing your mind? Because maybe in your upbringing, you were told that you were supposed to choose something and stick to it and you can't change your mind. We find all these little traumas, and it could be coming from a 6 or 8-year-old where you decided on this certain candy and then you didn't like it and you were forced to keep it. Like, there's all these little innocent traumas that are imprinted in our body. And that stuff is often leading the way of your decisions today. Or sometimes we're just trying to avoid doing things wrong, making the wrong decision. And so we don't give ourselves permission to pivot, to play, to get curious. So that's it. That is my story. That's what's going on. I have been like playing with this for a while. It's been a few months, and it's been a few weeks that I made the decision that I was either going to leave home for 21 to 28 days. I was going to do something different. I was going to hop in the van and go on a road trip. I was going to go into nature and go camping. I don't know, something, but I needed to get out of the environment. And I have now been able to give myself that time so that I can pivot, and so that I can play more, and so that I can flow more. And I'm curious to hear if it was something going on in the universe, if it was like planetarium, there was some kind of influence going on that's finally been lifted. It felt very pressuring. It felt very serious. And I did inquire with some of my trusted resources, like, okay, what is pinging me? What is going on? I know I'm super sensitive to the changes that are happening in the world. And it was a little bit of all of it. But I think the most important takeaway was the flexibility and the ability to pivot. And more than anything else, the willingness to stay disciplined, stay committed to the mission, to the intention, not drop that, but get out of the weeds and out of the mechanics and kind of allow life to come to me a little more effortlessly. But I'm not sitting waiting for the universe to deliver something in the mailbox. That's not at all what's happening. I'm actually anti that because you can't repeat it. You can't do it again. You don't know how it happened and you're not in control. So I do believe in gaining power and control of what we are creating and how to consciously create. So that is the 5-step process that I teach. And if you are interested in coach training or learning more about this mind body coaching or super coaching modality, I invite you to come into the community, respond to the email where you're getting this or to wherever you're listening to it at, and let me know that you're interested. We have a couple of options that are coming up. So that's going to be starting soon. Coach training is actually open enrollment. So we've got a great group already going. That's something that's just open enrollment all the time. So we just kind of keep going through it because of the way that I have changed the format. That is working extremely well. So I'd love to hear from you. I'd like to know what's going on in your world. And if you have made a recent pivot or if you're currently being challenged by something that just doesn't seem to be working, like are you banging your head? Are you stuck in cement? Or is your mind just trying to figure out what to do next, but you're not quite sure what that is? Or do you feel like you're being led? Do you feel like you're being summoned into change? Because for some of us, it's our age, it's what's going on at this time in our life. We've maybe retired from what we were doing before. Maybe the children had left, or maybe you're just ready for a change and you are finally brave enough to take that risk or take that chance. All right, have an amazing week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Mindset.